Let's talk a little bit about the webinar you got coming up, the nonlinear editing, and which side you're on. I find that fascinating. What do you see as some of the challenges that we're all going to be faced with over the next 6 to 12 months?
Just a few years ago, almost all this editing that was done, with the exception of just a couple pieces of software on the Windows and the Mac side, it was what we call proprietary. It was an owned technology, and you had to use one of the big companies, like Avid Technology or Grass Valley or one of those, and you sat down at a workstation which was not much more than a simple Windows computer or a Mac, and you paid $100,000 or $150,000 for a piece of software, and then you were locked in. You bought that software, you bought that hardware, you bought their storage, and they basically owned you. And what happened is, after Apple came up with something called Final Cut Pro, it pretty much changed. And then Adobe had Premiere, and even Avid opened it up with something called Media Composer. Autodesk came in with something called Smoke, and all of a sudden, any nonlinear editing platform worked in an open environment, and that meant that now you can choose the rest of the infrastructure that you need to do it. So if you're in a Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 company, you're likely, and even if you're at a big studio, or even you're a small company, you're not likely to buy a bunch of proprietary locked-in technology that you're going to have to pay enormous amounts of maintenance on every year. You want to try to say, well, if I'm going to have an Ethernet switch, I want it to be a Cisco or an Extreme or a Juniper. Or if I'm going to use a fiber channel switch, I want it to be a QLogic or a Brocade. I don't want to be locked into someone's particular technology. Same thing with storage. If I want to maybe buy active storage because it's half the price and twice the capacity, and I want to be able to buy all these different components, and I want to have a mix of PCs and Macs so that I can have the best of breed tools out there. But that infrastructure is really getting regulated by what nonlinear editor you choose. Because if you choose one that's more towards the closed side or the dark side, what will happen is you're going to be locked in for the next 10 years. And when it comes time to figure out what my cost is going to be and my efficiency, you're going to be paying that same fixed amount to those companies. Where if you choose something that's much more open, then you can say, well, next year I'm going to pick the best of breed, not only in the nonlinear editor, but in a color correction device, what I'm going to use for effects, what I use for 3D, and more importantly, and the thing that we look at is, as you have more storage and you apply it, you always want to save your content in the highest resolution you can, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, even look at television. If I had an HD TV, and I've had several different versions, if I had a 720p HD TV and all my content was in 720p, then I went to a 1080i, then I went to a 1080p, or today, like my whole house is full of 3D 1080ps, that content would look pretty bad. So I want to have the highest resolution content saved, because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I still need to transcode that so that I can deliver it on smartphones, deliver it across the web, deliver it to people who don't have HDTV. So that all is going to be determined. The cost of being able to do that will be determined by what nonlinear editor you choose. And so people who are making that choice today and making that investment should also think about how that investment works with their infrastructure, whether they're doing it in-house as an IT organization, saying, I'd rather buy more generic gear, or whether they're a studio or a broadcaster or a post-production facility saying, well, I don't want to be locked in for the next 10 years buying stuff that may not move as quickly, because let's face it, technology moves pretty fast.